Welcome to the video YouTube. Thanks for joining me today. So we are here with 26-year-old Neilen, who's based in London. He's an Amazon FBA seller and member of the Elite Academy. He's a valued student of mine. He's a very, very genuine, down-to-earth guy, and he's generated over £1 million in sales through his Amazon FBA and e-commerce business since 2018. So insane value coming your way. I'm excited to share with you guys Neilen's journey, how he's got on, the ups and the downs. I'm sure you'll find it extremely useful. Let us know what you think in the comment section below if we've missed anything, and enjoy the video. Welcome to the video, everyone. We're here with a member of the Elite Academy. I'm not going to introduce him because he's going to introduce himself, but thanks for coming. Feel free to fire away, get started, introduce yourself, and we'll go from there.
Hi, I'm Neilen. I'm 26. I'm from London. I do e-commerce full-time. So my brand, Proxnova, is the lighting company. I've been going for about 3 years now. So yeah, this is my full-time job.
And we actually spoke. We were just debating before this interview whether or not it was 2017 or 18, but it was 2018. So about 3 years ago, we first spoke on the phone. And at the time, you explain what you were doing at the time with Amazon FBA.
So at the time, I was actually selling quite common products, actually, like phone chargers, HDMI cables, what else? USB sticks, stuff that in my logic at the time, thought people are always going to buy these sort of things. You're never going to run out of customers for these sort of things. Mm-hmm. But what I didn't realize that they were quite saturated markets.
Yeah.
So they weren't going too well.
And I suppose that back then was what I suppose led you to me, because you reached out to me at the time with the training. Was that? I mean, how did you hear about Amazon FBA? Did you read about it? Was it like on the internet or a friend?
So actually, about 2 years before I'd met you, I was in a job that I hated, and I had kind of run out of options career-wise. So I was just stuck in this job that I hated, and randomly one day, when I was, browsing online in that job that I didn't want to be at, pretending to work, I found this random article by the startup bros, Will Mitchell, actually, about how you can buy products from China on Alibaba and sell them on Amazon and eBay. Now, obviously, the article really simplified it, but it made me go to Alibaba and open an account and start looking around at stuff. Because at the same time, I was also a person who hated shopping. And I never understood why you would go and walk around like 1,000 shops for 10 hours to find one thing, when you can just type in the word that you want and find exactly what you want and probably pay less and prefer the product that you get. So yeah, I just started to sell stuff online, really, just like in terms of generic products at first. It started with e-cigarettes, actually. And it started going really well, actually, on Amazon and eBay. And then it went really badly, and I guess reality hit. The products weren't great. And Amazon at the time, from 2016 to now, is a completely different place. in those times it was easy to just list something and sell it, and then they'll just quickly take it down. Whereas now you can't even list it. They'll still probably quickly take it down, but now you can't even list it. So at the time I started listing stuff, and then they got taken down, and I didn't really take it very seriously when I started it. And slowly I started taking it more and more seriously because I liked it. I realized this could be the only other alternative to the career I hated, and it was something I was interested in terms of I genuinely preferred shopping online.
Yeah.
So from then I tried to turn it into a proper brand, a proper company that sells cables and connections. The brand and the company was called Proxima One.
I remember.
Then in 2018, actually, when I was applying my first trademark, Proxima One, that trademark got opposed. I had to get a lawyer to fix it because I didn't understand what was going on. And I had to change the name of everything to a new name, basically. That was kind of a reset and a restart. And at the time, I felt like either this will be the end or who knows. And that was sort of half around the time when I actually started your course as well.
Yeah.
So I put the kind of the brand refresh in combination with the the new course and the new knowledge that I was gaining from it. And in product research, I started looking in completely different places. So not in cables and chargers, but more like lighting and light bulbs and stuff like that. And then I tried a couple of products, and they worked out. And I actually slowly just figured out how to do it well, really through experience. But really, it was experience and time that it took. The thing that a course gives you, I guess, is definitely the filling in the gaps and the knowledge that you wouldn't have had otherwise on how things work and how to do things. That really does change how you do things in terms of how to look through the Amazon catalog with a research perspective rather than just as a shopper. So I think that was really, really important.
Yeah, and I think what you're saying, it makes complete sense, and it rings truth. When you started, and I can concur with what you're saying here, you really did just slap a product up back for 4 years ago, 5 years ago. They let you do it. You'd slap a product up. It might take off. You didn't really need to do much in terms of branding. They were fairly lax with the way they vetted products that got listed, and you could make a quick buck. I know people that did that.
It's kind of like eBay.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, that's what I felt like. Yeah, it was a bit like eBay, and it's a good thing, and that they've managed to deter those sorts of sellers, because as a buyer, that's not what you want to buy. You want to buy into a good brand, and I think, like you mentioned there, with training, whether it's online training or whether you go to seminars or whatever you do, it just, in the current climate with FBA, you've got to have a better strategy than just throwing a product up. It just doesn't work anymore. Like with yourself, looking at the example of your first ones compared to a complete rebrand and taking it seriously. And yes, there's a lot that you need to learn, but in my opinion, it's not super complex. Like, it's quite open to a lot of people. It's not rocket science. It's not like doing a mathematics degree. It's not really complicated. It just takes hard work, basically. And if you're relatively capable and you're willing to put that grind in, but without the grind, unless you get very lucky, you're not gonna achieve anything much with it. And you've certainly been putting in the grind. How many you mentioned before the chat? How many how many units have just arrived? How many pallets have come, products that are going in?
So that was 2 units that two products that arrived, and that was how many units would that have been? That would have been 3,600 units of one of my products, and there'll be another 1,000 of something else coming in on Monday, and then another 3,000 of something coming in on Thursday or something like that. So yeah, it's on a constant conveyor belt, really.
Yeah. And the thing is, it's interesting, speaking to you now and seeing you do the sort of volume that you're doing. To some people who are watching, whether they're just starting Amazon FBA, but they'll look at those numbers, they'll feel quite detached from those numbers, and seeing get into these figures where you've got such large amounts of inventory turning over and processing through your account, but remembering that you were there, when I was speaking to you, started it from absolute scratch, and it's so amazing that you've been able to scale it up to the point now. If I think about when we had that first chat, I was looking out of the window at my parents' house, and you were like, it's going all right, but not great. Thinking of a rebrand, don't really know what's going on, and I need some help, and I want to really take this to another level. And you would have been at that stage back then, and to think now that, how much are you turning over roughly a month now in sales? Ish, with a complete
probably 60 to 70,000.
Yeah, so to think back then, if I'd have said to you back then, and I would never say it because and people always ask me, and it's a really difficult question to answer. How much am I going to make through Amazon FBA? If I launch a product, how much money am I going to make? And I can't really say. I don't know, but what I can do is I can maximize the chance of someone doing well. But those numbers are just incredible. Over 1 million.
At the time, actually, at that very time, I was doing about £700 or £800 in sales per month.
It's like 100 times more almost.
Which is crazy.
It is, man. Yeah. £1 million, like £1 million through all of the stores, and is unbelievable. And what would you say? I'm sort of deviating a bit now, aren't I? But I remember, again, we spoke when you were away. You were abroad. This wouldn't have been only 6 months after we started speaking. But how does your life look now when you're turning over, and that is sales, guys. That's not profit. We'll talk about profit. But when you are doing figures like that, what does life look like to an FBA seller who's full time compared to when you were working full time? How does your day fill up?
It is completely different. You're a lot more accountable. You're accountable for everything. I think the big difference, actually, going back one question, is actually whether you look at it casually or look at it as a serious thing.
Yeah.
The more seriously I looked at it and the more seriously I took it, the more serious it became.
Yeah.
So, once you start making, like, I don't know, £10,000 a month or something, it's easy to go, oh yes, I'm making £10,000 a month. I can, go and buy a new car and do this and do that. And you can, yeah, but then if you were to reinvest that, what could that be next year?
Yeah.
Every pound that you spend rather than reinvest, if every pound were to double that you reinvest, you would think more carefully about every pound that you spend, because every pound that you spend is a pound that you can't invest.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, yeah, that's definitely the difference in the way you look at things, because you realize you have to be accountable for everything. And it's about, before you're a small piece in a bigger machine. If you don't do something, someone else will do it for you, or it will get covered.
Yeah.
Or if it doesn't, well, you still get paid at the end of the month. Whereas with this way, you're accountable for everything. If you don't do something and that, screws up your account, then you can't get paid. Then,
that's it.
You have to be accountable for your own action. Whereas, before it's not necessarily that way. So
yeah, and I suppose
I think the big difference.
and that must be a big motivator, I suppose, isn't it? Because and for me especially, when you're working, if you're not working with incentivized, promotional stuff where you get extra money for more work that you do, and you've just got a fixed salary, then you're not commission based. Is what I'm looking at basically there. You're not incentivized to put loads of work in unless you're really passionate about your job. You're just going there, you're doing the bare minimum really, you're scraping through to get your paycheck. Whereas with FBA, exactly like you said, if every pound that you invest is a pound doubled with a 100% ROI, you've got so much more incentive to work and to make it work and to grow. And it's quite a powerful thing, isn't it? It's an exciting thing seeing a brand grow. I bet you found that exciting, seeing so many people using your products and on Instagram, sharing photos of what you're doing and things like that.
Yeah, definitely. It was really exciting as it grew. It was really something I hadn't imagined happening earlier.
How do you balance your time?
I just really thought.
How do you balance your time? I mean, what does your day look like with work, and do you try to have a healthy sort of split balance between the two, personal life and work?
So at the moment, I would admit I don't have a healthy balance, but that's not because of FBA actually. That's because I try and take on other work as well.
Yeah.
So I mean, I do this full time, but also I invest and trade in stocks as well. And I'm doing a cybersecurity engineering degree at the same time as well.
So on your plate.
So I'm juggling a lot, and after taking like 5 years off from gym, I'm trying to get in shape again and try and work out at least 3 times a week. And I've just recently bought a house as well.
Congratulations.
That was pretty long. Thank you. But yeah, that was pretty long, the paperwork and all of that. And I'm getting married at the end of the year as well. Sorry, in a few months actually. So a lot of stuff to juggle. So yeah, I sleep well at night. But,
yeah, I bet.
But work-life balance, I'm not sure if there is one, but that's
you're happy.
That's really thing. Because I choose for it to be that way.
Yeah, absolutely.
In terms of FBA, at the moment, if you were to just say FBA, I probably stop working on FBA stuff around 2 o'clock normally, most days, if I start at 9.
Yeah.
On the first, actually, hours. To be fair, the first 2 hours, first hour actually at least, is not even anything to do with Amazon. It's normally like eBay and website stuff. So
yeah,
there's not a lot of maintenance actually.
Neilen, I mean, one thing to touch on, for someone who's just complete newbie visiting the channel, stumbled across this video, you mentioned briefly, but how does it work? What a very basic overview of how it works.
So I can split it into two. So private label is where you have your own brand and business to sell your own brand of goods.
Yeah.
That's essentially what private label is. You can trademark it, or you don't have to. You should, but you don't have to.
Yeah.
But that's really what private label is. And FBA is, how you sell and distribute the goods. So you would ship all of your stock in bulk to an Amazon warehouse. And when an Amazon customer makes an order, Amazon will then fulfill that order to the end. So they'll actually deliver your product from their warehouse to that customer.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good breakdown. And a lot of people ask, do I need to store the products? Do I have to have a room full of boxes? One of the beauties of FBA is that we're using their fulfillment services to prevent or to allow us to not have to do that. So that's what basically makes it scalable. It's what makes it feasible for lots of people who are working 9-to-5s, who, the vast majority of people, certainly that I mentor, they're working full-time jobs. it's quite uncommon to speak to someone who's just, hasn't got a job and they're just, they start. Although it does happen, it's just more, I suppose, more commonplace to be working. But when I speak to people, one of the biggest questions I suppose I'm asked is, how do I find a product? Like, the concept, the notion of launching your own brand is just far-fetched almost. It's almost like unattainable. It's like, what the hell am I going to sell that is going to do well? So how, looking at product research, what software did you use? And, what makes a good product? What in your opinion, what could give some people some tips on what makes a good product?
Okay, so the first thing actually I would say, number one rule, is no water bottles. That's everybody's first idea. And that's way too played out. Unless you've invented a new water bottle, no water bottles.
Yeah.
That's the first one.
I agree with that.
Okay, so the second one is actually, I don't use any softwares actually for the research.
Okay.
I do it organically now. When I say now, even before, I don't think I've ever really used a software. I do it organically now that I've really seen how to look at the marketplace for research purposes rather than shopping purposes.
Yeah.
So the way I would actually do it right now is if I decide on a type of product, a category of products that I think will be easy in terms of they're simple and they can't go that wrong. I would say maybe for an example, let's go back to the water bottle for an example.
Mm-hmm.
You would, let's say, look at water bottles and look at the subcategory and say the top 50.
Mm-hmm.
So you'll have, I don't know, sports and outdoors as the main thing, and underneath it will have water bottles. If you click on water bottles and look at the first page, the first 50, I would literally press Control and zoom out so that I can see all of them, or as many of them in one page as possible. Get a pen and just write down the 5 or 10 most common things I'm seeing on everything in front of me. So all the top 50, they tend to have, I don't know, almost all of them are 750 ml. Mm-hmm. That's your first point. Almost all of them are translucent, so you can see the liquid inside them. Second point, most all of them have a hanging loop on the lid, so that you can hang them from a belt. That's your third one. Simple things like that. They're all BPA free. Again, that's another sort of standard, key feature. Then what you would then do is try and find on Alibaba a product that satisfies those design criteria, but that isn't already on Amazon. So if you find something that you think this is the one, just go back to Amazon and look for it. And if you can't find it, then you've found something probably quite good. That is a really easy way of actually finding quite a unique product.
Yeah, and I suppose
it's actually working backwards.
Yeah, reverse engineering the process. And I suppose you can further that, by looking if the product isn't selling on Amazon. Some would worry, well, how do I measure the demand? But you can just have a look and see how using Magnet or using Google Trends, what's the search volume for those keywords? Are people searching for it? Like you're saying, if it's not there and people are searching for it a lot, I mean, yeah, it makes a lot of sense to put a product in front of those searches. And like you said, you're doing things backwards, almost like reverse engineering the common method, the most I suppose overused methods, where you go through the simple criteria. Although it can be beneficial to have some sort of rigid structure to criteria, I always say to people when they ask, you've got to be flexible and you need to be able to think outside the box and think not how other people are thinking. Because if you're thinking the same way as everyone else, then it's likely going to be saturated. That's
sure.
really good. That's really good answer. That's the first. I suppose the first time I've spoken to someone with that unique single approach where they haven't been using software. So it's interesting to hear lots of these different methods, because I'm sure it will be a lot of help to people, given just having another angle to come at product research from. So if you guys are watching this, give it a spin. I'm certainly gonna put a post up about that later on. So thanks for that. Niches, Neilen. A lot of people ask me about, what niche is better than others, and which is the best. Which one should I go for? What's your view on? I know you mentioned to me before the call, you sort of carved your own niche. I suppose that will fit into your answer. But is there a perfect niche? Is there certain ones you should be looking for?
There isn't a perfect niche, actually. So when I carved my own, that was kind of I found sort of half a niche and then made it more and more niche as I went along, which I sort of created my own sort of market segment that way. But really, with a niche, the first thing you would really be looking for is not to overcomplicate it. So one of my earlier mistakes was a video doorbell, which, I mean, I don't think it even really worked that well. But it was really overcomplicated. So many customers had issues with installing the app, or setting it up, or wiring it in. And then along the way, they would have maintenance issues, and that product was a headache from start to finish. Mm-hmm. And I found that headache seemed to correlate with however complicated the product is. So, if you're looking for something like, I don't know, maybe smart home gear is a perfect example. If you've bought it and it works really well and it's really simple, that's one thing. Maybe that's your opinion on how simple it is. But realistically, you'd need to look at how simple will everyone find to set up and use this. Because if you're picking something that is going to be complicated or easier to return than set up, then you're going to get a lot of returns.
Yeah, I completely agree with you there. Electronics, not obviously every product in electronics, but certain products, I suppose it's more commonplace for products to be a little bit more complicated often with electronics, because we've got Bluetooth devices and lights, flashing strobe lighting with a spinning top that's got a motor in it that connects to Bluetooth and does all of these things, and and it's got to be set up on your Wi-Fi, and those products cause headaches. And using an example of a product that a student launched, I won't mention what the product is, but I told them that there's a risk with the product that it's likely to break. Basically, there's too much that can go wrong with it, even though it's a good product. And there were examples of sellers doing really well. There was just a risk, and it was a bigger risk than I'd really want to take if I was investing, £2,000 or whatever you were investing in. He did it anyway because it was only advice from me, and he launched it. I think his first month he did 4K. Really good, like really good product launch, and almost rushed the sampling process a little bit. And second month came in, dropped down to 3. Negative reviews started to come in, drip. One a week, even more frequent than that. It's broken. The battery doesn't fit. The little coil that the battery sits on's popped off. The Bluetooth connection isn't working, etc. And it just died. Then the first few months it went down and down and down, and the product failed. And although that isn't the case always, because obviously there are products that are complex that do sell, but as a new person going to launch a product, and just generally, if you can carve a niche with products that are just a little bit more simple, you can still have complex elements, but just really think about your choice, exactly as you're saying there. with what you're doing, because often something that you think's easy, someone else won't find very easy. You might have been researching it for months and think, well, that's easy. Definitely this is great. But then when you put it in front of someone who's never seen it before and they open it up, they might think, oh my days, like you said, easier to return this. Don't know how to do it. So that's a good point. Another thing people ask a lot of, and they'll be really interested to hear your opinion, is in 2021, how do you get reviews when you launch a product? What's your way of doing it?
So for me, I actually use I still use the old-fashioned follow-up emails, and the request a review button. So when I sell it, my first few, I just sell them really cheap. I make sure the listing's as good as possible beforehand. So, when I'm finally going to send the product in, I make sure, the description exactly matches the product. Make sure there's no mistakes. Make sure the product's genuinely good. So one thing that you can do in the first place to mitigate negative reviews, because that's one thing, is over time, you can never protect yourself from negative reviews if your product's bad. If you're selling a bad product in 3 years, what's the likelihood of you having loads of good reviews? Probably not. I mean, in the first month, maybe, if you've got loads of people to leave reviews for you, but in 3 years, many reviews later, not really. So if you try your best to actually launch a good product in the first place, that will help a lot of the problems with the reviews. Following that, if you do things organically, you should start to collect even just 1 or 2 reviews a week at first is pretty good.
Very good, yeah.
Then they just start to snowball. Because as you get more reviews, you get more sales. And then as you get more sales, you're able to send more review follow-up emails. So if last week you sent 5 follow-up review emails and you got 1 review, this week you make 10 sales, you get 2 reviews, keep scaling that up and they will snowball. But honestly, it's making sure that your product is as good as possible before you launch it, and making sure your description is as good as possible. And maybe even, so one example I can give with solar lights, a common issue with solar lights is people buy them, they open them up. I sell solar lights, so I know that was an issue. They press the on button, nothing happens. And so then they just put it back in the box and return, saying it didn't work, and then they give you a 1-star review. So instead, what you do is you can maybe foresee things like that. What I did was actually in the instruction manual say, make sure you leave this outdoors in daylight for 4 hours. And you also put that in your product description. Those 2 things will mean customers are probably likely to, leave that product outside for 4 hours, come back in, press the on button, see, it does actually work perfectly well. Now they're more likely to give you actually a 5-star review rather than the 1-star review. So you could really avoid that by just maybe foreseeing. Look at the type of product that you're selling and what's the most common failure points.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think, and a lot of people forget about the product, right, in this. And I talk to a lot of people about this. They look at all these complicated methods to gain reviews through various different platforms and launches and using lots of different software, and they forget about the fact that the real focus needs to be on the product, because the reason that people are going to go out their way and leave a good review is if the product is good. And if you've overlooked that, and rather than looking at the core features of the product and do they work and is it effective, and sort of just looking at how can I go out and get them, like you said, in the short term, you might get 30 reviews and it might start going well, but ultimately, as time goes on, like exactly as you said, they will start to drip in. And, unfortunately, it's not really level playing field for sellers. It's not, in my opinion, very fair because, if you, let's say, using an example, I'm not sure what it would be for your products, but say you sell 100 products, right? You might 90 to 95% of those people won't review. If you get 5 out of 100, it's pretty good. If you've got 10, 5 is very good. 10 out of 100 would be a lot. But if, let's say, hypothetically, 95 products out of those 100 were good, right? They were really good. Those 95 people still might not review, right? They just don't bother to go onto their account and review. Of the remaining 5, let's say that you had 5 products that were defective, you might well have half of those people leave a negative review or more. So
that is an exact issue that
it's so annoying, right?
Because so true.
Out of the 95 people who are happy, you might only get 1 or 2, right? So 1 or 2 people review out of 95 happy people. Out of 5 unhappy people, you also have 2. Now your listing is reflected with a 50-50 split, 2.5 stars. But in reality, it's 96 to 2. But do you know what I mean? It's not reflected very fairly, and it's really hard to counter it, isn't it? It's so hard.
Yeah, that is a really, really good point. Actually, that is one thing I've always said is that if the customers had a negative experience, they seem more likely to leave a review than if they've had a positive one.
Yeah.
And then in this tiny minority of negative ones, they're more inclined to leave you a review, which it doesn't reflect well. Unfortunately, the only real ways of dealing with it is just to make sure your listing product and a little manual or slip that comes with it does everything they can to direct the customer in the right direction. Mm-hmm. Following that is everything you can do, and make sure you tweak your follow-up emails to maybe be as good as possible. Not too long.
And as you said as well, the product description, making sure that you've got an accurate description of what the customer is buying, because ultimately that customer doesn't know what the product's going to be like. They're reading it and they're expecting for what they've read to arrive at the doorstep and what they've seen in the photos. And if you've got a picture of, I don't know, a kit that you use to do your beard, right? Like a pair of scissors and this and that, and it's scaled so it looks huge, right? You might get the sale for it, but when it arrives and it's this big, they look at it and think, well, that doesn't look like what it looked like in the photo. 1-star review, send it back. And in the long run, it's better to just be really accurate with what you're actually promoting to avoid anyone receiving something that they didn't expect, and that they expected something different to what they got. And I have a lot of listings that I review for members, and we look at those aspects of listings and how can we be really, really accurate, looking at a few reviews that they've got. And that's another good point, looking at what customers are saying and addressing it. Because if one person's reviewed it, if one person's left a negative review, maybe 1,000 people have thought it but haven't left the review. And if you can address that, you're not only potentially removing that one review, but you're addressing those 1,000 views that other people are having that aren't leaving it. So awesome. That's really, really good. We've talked a lot about those two things, right? But we mentioned highs and lows with FBA, because it's not all highs, absolutely not. And there are lows, and some of them are pretty bad. You've experienced a couple of bad ones. With your lows, what's happened? What's your worst experience, and what would you advise to people to avoid it?
My worst experience. My worst experience is probably I got suspended for a few hours in 2019, April it was. May Day bank holiday, and it was only for a few hours, and it was for something really small. But yeah, like that day when it happened, time seemed to stop. Even when I think back to it, it's like, whoa, it's crazy for that to actually happen, especially like, when you first start selling on Amazon and you have no idea what you're doing. You click the wrong things, you fill in the wrong stuff, you get suspended. But you had a job, you were just starting this. You had nothing riding on this yet. When you've gotten past all of those hurdles, and you've gone to a part-time job to leaving your job, making this your full-time thing. um, when there's a lot riding on it, it becomes increasingly scary.
Mm.
That things like that can happen, and it's absolutely possible. It's within realistic possibility for your Amazon account to get suspended, and that day it did happen to me. And that did actually teach me two things. One is always actually stick to policies as close as possible and read them properly. Make sure you're abiding to everything as you should be. And also, if you get any account defects, account issues, just address them. Try and sort out as much of these small blemishes that you think don't matter as soon as possible, because what doesn't matter can start snowballing. Just like the good stuff can snowball, the bad stuff can snowball too, and that can cause a suspension. The other thing I actually learned was to actually mitigate your risk away from not just your one platforms, but your one listings too. So I would always advise anybody who's selling on Amazon to probably sell on eBay too. If not, have your own website. If you're not planning to even go that far, I'd still say at least Amazon and eBay, simply because, the more places you have to sell, the better. And if something goes wrong, at least you have an alternative. That actually relates to another reason why you should not just diversify your marketplaces in terms of Amazon and eBay, but also have more than one successful product. If you've found one successful product, you can, in theory, just sit back and take the income from that product. You could even take a full-time income from that product. But it makes more sense to then try and release more successful products, because along the timeline, stuff can get removed, stuff becomes inviable, stuff stops selling, becomes less popular in the future. And it can definitely not even be an Amazon issue that affects you. It can just simply be that product is not as in demand anymore. Or even that listing on its own can get taken down, because that actually is an issue that I faced a few months ago. Actually, as recently as a few months ago, I had a product removed off of Amazon for, to be honest, it's still not clear. It was some kind of false claim by a competitor. Honestly, it still happens even at this stage. But I actually had 1,200 units in stock of that. Each were, I think, $6 or $7 each. So it was a lot. It was a lot of money as well. That was just, what can I do with it? If the listing's been removed, it really was that way. If I had not been able to sell them on eBay, all I did was simply reduce the price by £1 on eBay to make it that bit more desirable. And if I hadn't had eBay and all of that set up there, I'd still be sitting on that, however much that loss was, 10 grand. But instead, I sold it all on and got my money back. So now I still have the opportunity to carry on selling it. I could buy more and still sell it through eBay if I wanted to, or I could discontinue it. But definitely not just having different platforms, but different listings, because obviously, even though that got removed off of Amazon, I've still got loads of other listings selling on Amazon. Whereas if that had been my one listing, then
don't put all your eggs in one basket and bank on it, basically.
Yes,
Yeah,
exactly.
really trying to, like you said, mitigating the risk and diversifying your range, your brand, whether it's outside of your brand or within within the niche that you're operating in, just spreading the risk over lots of products. And there's usually, from my experience with working with a lot of people who have had issues, there's usually a way around it, but not always. And if there isn't, exactly like you said, to be able to know or have confidence that you've got an account on eBay and you've got good seller feedback and you've got an existing platform that you're used to and you can use. It's like a backup, as a worst case scenario with a product, to almost like an exit strategy, if you need to use it, which means you're not lumped with, like you said.
It's almost like having two jobs in case you lose one.
Yeah, basically. Yeah. So it makes sense. I completely agree with you there. And a lot of people who I speak to, they say, Dil, I want to start on Amazon and build my brand and get some experience and slowly branch off and start to fulfill through my website with Shopify, or even using FBA through Shopify. And I've got a lot of people who've done that now. It's usually after a year or two when they've got some experience, but successfully, moved over to a different platform and operate the two in tandem. And again, like you said, not only does it increase your revenue streams, you're tapping into different markets, right? But you're also mitigating risk at the same time. So it's just clever. It's a clever way of thinking. And like you said, banking, just sitting back and thinking, let's say you launch a really good product and it just off the bat, it's doing 10K in sales, you're making 3K profit, you think, great, that's it for me now. Just going to sit back and chill for 2 years. And at the end of the second year, demand goes down, your supplier drops off the face of the planet, costs go up, and all of a sudden you're back to square one. Things have changed, and you're in a position where things aren't looking as good as they were or could have been had you done exactly what you said, and not getting comfortable, not getting too comfortable too quickly, looking at it more, the longevity of your product and brand rather than just being quick cash, because it can provide quick cash, but that's definitely not the way to look at it if you want to get into a position where you are now and leading on to two things. So your plan for your brand, and you spoke about it with me before, and also what's the highest high. So we've looked at a low. People don't want to always talk about good things, but what is the best moment that you've had, and what's your plan moving forward with the brand? Where are you going with it?
Highest high. That is a good question. I do struggle with that one. I think the highest high has to be really now. I mean, and it's not even the highest high. I'm sure in the future there'll be higher highs. Because if you'd asked me the same last year, I probably would have said now. As things get better, those really are the highs. I mean, when I used to work in the job that I used to hate, what I used to get paid in a year, I now make that in about 2 weeks. I don't have to work the same way as I did then. I don't hate my job anymore. And obviously, I'm able to make money at a much higher rate than I was before. And that feels great, honestly, when you get to leave a job that you hate and eventually get to a point of doing something that you enjoy and that you've built yourself, and you get to make far more from it than anything else you've done before. It's great, honestly, because it helps open up the avenues to other things in your life. Like, I was able to buy a house after messing up my first attempt at education. I'm able to fund another education. I was able to get laser eye surgery. That was a huge thing for me. I had glasses before. That's probably one of the best few grand I've ever spent, is actually laser eye surgeries. It's all the other little things that it leads to that really buys value.
Yeah, and I suppose everything you said encompassed in words, sort of just it opens different doors and avenues and gives you a lot of fulfillment, I suppose, doesn't it? There's nothing worse in life, or very few things, that are worse than like not feeling fulfilled. Every day you just finish the day and think, I'm not doing what I want to be doing, and I don't feel good about it, and it's just an awful feeling. And with Amazon FBA and lots of other e-com stuff, drop shipping, other things that work, they work well. It opens doors. You suddenly have a little bit more money to free up your time, so you don't need to work 50 hours a week. You then work 25, and then that leads to, well, I actually love cycling, so I'm going to make sure that I'm doing something that I love every day, and I'm going to cycle for 2 hours a day. And you suddenly get a lot of fulfillment from that, and you're like, wow, this is great. And you're managing your own time. There's no one telling you what to do. You've got a lot of self-drive, and like, it just I could go on literally forever. I genuinely think I could literally keep reeling off good things about how you feel when you've got your own online business, especially when it's got a degree of automation, especially, but still involvement, but automation as well. It's just an unreal feeling. And I spoke to someone today, joined the Elite Academy yesterday, and he wanted a call with me. He just messaged me on Instagram. He's probably watching this now, and he said he just wanted to have a chat. He said, I wanted some motivation, was what he said to me this morning. He said, I want some motivation. He said, I'm feeling motivated, but I want to talk to you. And hopped on a call with him, and, seeing him at that first stage, and a lot of those reasons that I just mentioned, the reasoning that he's got behind why he wants to do it are those reasons. And, if I could, what we're, adding the value that we're doing now, just to show that it is possible, and your real life proof of that, I suppose, which is great.
Yeah, it really is. It really is possible if you force it. You think some of these things, that the successes and things that go right in life was because they went right. It wasn't because they went right. It's because somebody made it go right. You know what I'm saying? They pushed it there. It didn't happen. They pushed it there.
Yeah,
and if you push it there, it can get there.
Yeah, where there's a will, where there's a will, there's a way. And if I talk a lot about mindset and fixed and growth mindsets, and a lot of people with fixed mindsets will be in the position that you were and I was, in a job I didn't particularly like, and I wanted all these different freedoms and etc. etc. But whilst I felt that being unfulfilled, I was just unable to explore new ideas. I just automatically thought that it isn't possible. I won't be able to do it. It's a scam. It can't. I can't achieve it. And sort of disregarding things before you've really looked into them enough to know if they're viable. I have people who comment on, some of the ads that I run, and they just say bullshit. That's just all they say. And I just ignore them. I don't mind, because people will think like that. But they're all they are, assuming they're the type of person that wants to do it. They're just damaging to themselves. And if you've got that growth mindset, where you're willing to explore new ideas, different things, that's when you can achieve great things. And like, if you look at me and you, right, with what we've done with FBA and with my training and things, if I hadn't thought that I could do it, never would have happened. I wouldn't have started. Or if I wasn't even willing to look at it as an option, I was just stuck in my own ways, I would never have got there. And the same with you, with what you said as well. So yeah, taking something from the video, guys, go for it. Whatever it is you want to do, visualize doing it, go and try your damn hardest to make it happen, and I'm sure you will. But Neilen, it's been
the plunge.
It's been
really about taking the plunge.
Taking the plunge, taking that leap of faith. I say a lot of people that bring up with what I say, but mate, you've been an absolute star. Thanks for sparing your afternoon. What is it? Friday afternoon with me on the channel. I appreciate it a lot. It was awesome.
It's been really good catching up.
It's been really good catching up. It's been too long. We need to make sure we speak more often. But guys, any questions? I'll do my best to respond. If Neilen checks the video out, he'll respond to any comments that you've got. So let me know how you get on. We'll speak to you soon.
Sure.
Ledge.
I'll speak to you soon.